Okay. Been struggling with the audio today. Seems like it's back in operation. Yeah. Hey there, Slami. Still working on the game. Yup. We're gonna be getting into some of that today. We've got some pathfinding logic that we've been working on. I would say so. There's been some kind of conceptual changes to the flow of gameplay, but for the most part, the infrastructure continues to progress, I think, very nicely. Giving Sky some ear scratches here. Let's see. We do have Sky in my lap. I can hear Ember flailing away at the TV in the play area. And I can see Mason and Sammy on the bed. Quick. Molly is not below my feet. Hey there, Otto. Welcome. We are just getting started. Okay. So last time, if you were here, or if you recall, was getting not a number values in my vector 4 returns from our shader. And I discovered the reason for that. Apparently those not a numbers were actually specific error codes for divide by zero errors that were happening in the shader during that process. And the reason they were happening is because of this normalize call. So shader code is really optimized and doesn't do a lot of conditionals. These conditionals that we're doing here are more okay because they're part of compute shaders. We're trying to do some brute force calculations. But that means that that lack of conditionals inside some of the core stuff means if I pass a zero vector into this, it fails. So we have to make sure that any vector we pass into it is not a zero vector. It has a length of some kind. What that allowed us to do... Could I see the game? Let's see here. Yeah. There's some debugging stuff in place. Let's lower that a little further. It's just loud to me. There we go. Need to break there. Oh, wait. It's probably not going to work. Okay, so this is our testing map. I've put it here so that it definitely shows up. There, we do have an error that we're going to be working through today. Yeah. Okay, so this is where we are. This is the test floor pattern. If there wasn't a bug present, you would be able to see the enemies converging through this area here. As soon as they hit the black area, except for here, which is a bug surface, they would kind of slide along the edges here and move to the center. Neat, cool. It should do that, but it doesn't because there's a problem. So unfortunately, you can't see it functioning right now, and that is because of this little guy right here. So one of the things we learned last time, and it has extended into other areas, is it is very important when this rendering device gets created. If it happens in the physics thread, this guy lives in the physics thread. This is like a Survivor style game, Salami. So the slide along the edges is meant to be so that they don't collide with the walls. we have potentially hundreds and hundreds of enemies that are going to pile into that room. And we need to make that so that they don't move through walls. And eventually, once we've got this part working, that they don't move through each other. Why I use Windows still? At this point, force of habit and I guess a willingness to suffer. Oh. Additionally, there's still plenty of software that is going to be Windows specific, and it doesn't help me if I have to run a Windows emulator on Linux. Like, there is increasing support for Linux, and if it crosses a line where what I use is all compatible with it, I would jump ship. Microsoft is doing all of the wrong things right now. Like my start menu right here. This big blank spot, in the last update, they added a, hey, we've got an AI generated list of all of the apps on your computer, and it's, I don't need or want that. Stop trying to make me use Copilot. Nobody wants to use Copilot. Microsoft is desperate for their AI assistant to be relevant, and that paired with their want to use that in their development processes and the corresponding or the strongly correlated drop in the quality of their patches is just pain. And if nothing else, I would like to see Linux take off as a substantial competitor to Microsoft and Macintosh as far as operating systems. If it becomes an actual competitor, the others are going to have to shift their butts and actually up the quality. Yep, and that's the problem with all of the, like, so many of the implementations of these large language model AIs is machine learning systems. The desperate need for them to call it artificial intelligence is part of the PR. It's neural nets, genetic algorithms. These are not artificial intelligences. These are machine learning algorithms. And large language models, as much as they can produce good results, it's that they randomly produce very bad results, very irrelevant results. It is definitely in some way inside Visual Studio here, because it will code completion suggest things that do not make sense. Like, it can't compile if you do that. It would immediately trigger an error if you did that. So why would, if the editor says that is an invalid bit of code, why would their code completion system suggest that? Because it doesn't know anything. How do I feel about it being 30% AI code? I think that's why all of their patches have been shoddy. I think that's why a lot of their decision making in things like user interface are starting to fall apart. Like, there are definitely places that large language models are producing useful results. There are scientific studies and processing operations where having things that can suggest essentially shapes to work with are great. And as idea boards, they can be really good. But the constant attempt to replace systems that are ultimately more complicated than these language models can handle is leading to problems. Oof. I mean, relevant to that, I feel like part of my audio problems lately is that the noise gate that I use for my voice here. Uh, let me get a marker. So you notice how it went quiet there? Yeah, that's because of NVIDIA Broadcast. And the problem is, NVIDIA Broadcast has started to get kind of unreliable for me. It will just stop working. And I wonder how much of that is that they're using AI models in the background for it, for things like the voice recognition and whatnot, in that it just breaks down for whatever reason. I had to jump through all kinds of hoops to get to the point where it's working again. I just don't understand. My member emojis use the old the catbot lore relevantly. The catbot is now the chat avatar, the mascot. They actually came after the switch from the old model. This guy is really soaking up the attention here. His eyes are rolled way back. Okay, fixing this. So, again, rendering device is dependent on when it was created. So one of the things that we have to do is move all of the code initially. Ow, oh, ow, ow, pain. Ow. Well, that'll bleed soon. Sky did that fun cat thrashing kickoff and it caught my wrist. I definitely need to find some more I wouldn't mind finding another kind of chill puzzle game to play. Oh yeah, that's gonna bleed a bit. We'll see if it gets worse. But yeah, Entropy Center was fun. It's tricky. It's tricky finding games that are mentally engaging like that and stick to it. We have spent some time recently with some real cerebral puzzle games. We did a full like investigative detective game that was about pretty much reading articles and finding pictures and whatnot to supply you with relevant information in the actual game. Like they had set up in-engine fake websites and documents and books and whatnot. It was pretty cool. Superliminal. I haven't tried that one. That's the one that is, it's like visual spatial manipulation. Hey there, Lore. Okay. Okay, so we need to go into core. We need to change this. It cannot be during ready. It cannot be during initialize. Oh, that's unpleasant. Oh yeah, during the first break, we're gonna have to clean that. Slice me good. Not the worst I've had. Sammy will straight on fight. Oh, hello, Emperor. Yes. Hello. Okay, no, I should clean that now. I will be right back. I have to tend to a cat wound. Well, a cat inflicted wound. One moment. Sorry about that, everyone. Cat scratch was awkwardly placed for standard adhesive medical strips, so I had to find the gauze and whatnot. For those that weren't here, Sky kicked off and sliced my wrist a little bit. Which, phrasing it that way, please no ban YouTube. Nothing deep, but, a notable scratch. But back to topic. So, we need to get our initial load up outside of ready and all of that. We need it during the first physics tick. It'll sting a bit, but that'll wear off once it starts to actually heal. Yeah, the cat scratch should be fine. Rinsed out, antimicrobial, all of that. In general, any sort, even if it's a pet, any sort of bite or slap or like claw scratch or something like that, you do need to make sure you clean it up. Cats will kick at their litter or scratch at their litter. Punctures in general are bad news as far as infection. So always making sure that you get things cleaned up properly is a good idea. Okay, so we need an initialized. I've seen Talos Principle, Salami. Like I've seen it like for sale. Never played it. Hello, Ember. Yes, hello. Don't really like having a initialized variable, but it's just a Boolean check, so we should be fine. Thanks for swinging through, Salami. Go catch that bus. Okay, so we need to do the full kickoff here. Amber. Yeah. Don't you do that. Yeah. Ember is on my shoulder. She is. Come on now. Come on. Yeah. Been trying to find lots of things to keep all of their attentions. This might be apparent, I'm at the desk a lot. I'm pretty sedentary. And with all 6 of them, I need to make sure that they all have enough to engage their own levels of activity. And Ember will, it's not quite, traditional zoomies, but she likes to really intensively play now and again. So per Sherbet Molly, I need to make sure they have plenty to do when they want to. Sammy and Sky, not big players. Sky will, but not infrequently. He's kind of an old man. Okay, so we get this out of Core's initialize. Or Core's startup. We need to make sure that initialized becomes immediately true. So we only do this once. So kick that off. Now we need to go to our ready function here. And we're going to take that out. Go here. And then we're going to hope this works. If this does, then we should be in pretty good shape for some of it. Still no. Okay. Let's look at the Godot side and see what kind of error we're still getting. Look at it go. But move on grid should only happen during the first physics tick. Game, node. None of this should be happening yet. Okay, so let's step through this here. Core gets created and attached to the tree. Then we get physics process. Our first tick happens. And this should be the first time that we get the initialize happening. Or that we get the reference to services. So we're going to put a break here. We're going to go into services, and we're going to put a break here. Okay, that should be the case. This is the first time services gets invoked. Which means the catalog should have begotten loaded at this point. Because the catalog should also load up when it goes here. Let's catalog load. That gets called from the loading screen. Just want to make sure what I'm looking to do is make sure that we have the right order of events. Okay, first physics tick, then service provider, then catalog. Okay, then we're going to go into here. And then we're going to go into our move on grid. And this will go into the flow generator, which we'll call into here, where we're going to have create flow to center is what it's going to be looking for. Rendering device is not initialized yet, so we're going to go into the initialization. And this is where we'll create it. And we're setting up all of our stuff here. So then we step out of the initialize. So we're done there. And we should still be in the physics thread right now. It gets duplicated. We're going to change this. This will be in its copy constructor is where it needs to do this sort of footwork. Flow to center is a thing. So why work? It's in the floor flow that it's having this problem. Putting any of this in a constructor is risky. We do need a sort of core initialize that needs to happen with these objects, but for the time being, we'll stick with what we've got. In 222. Right there. So it says we can only do this in the rendering thread, but doesn't make any sense because it's supposed to be that wherever you create it is the thing. Yeah, returned unavailable. So that buffer update did not actually happen. We'll also need a replacement for the saving logic, because apparently the save to an EXR doesn't actually work outside of debug mode, which isn't out of the question. Like, that's not really a problem for us. We can always conditionally compile that away. Just kind of annoying. Okay, when we make the rendering device, can we solve for that? only has the one operator there. It's weird for this to only be able to do it in the context of the rendering thread for create local. So anything on the rendering device. Because this is Godot's pattern for it, but this looks like a static. Nope. It's not a static. That would be if you already have one. So this indicates that it should be independent. So our storage buffer update must be our problem. So it might be that we just need to create them independently. Or create them each time. So instead of having... Instead of updating them, we make a new one each iteration, and we get rid of it as we need to. Doesn't hurt us as far as like ready and whatnot to get rid of the dependency here. What that can mean is that we can just do this each time. We can just change the param data bytes as we need to, and we recreate the buffer each time. Seems like waste, but we're going to do a whole other operation. So let's try adding that in. So what we'll do is we're going to get rid of our changes to core for the time being, because that doesn't actually seem to be the issue. It seems to be that the buffer update, it doesn't like calling that outside of the render thread. That might be something that's not available to our process here. So let's look for our buffer updates. So here we're doing a create a buffer. Here we're doing a buffer update. So instead of doing a buffer update, to buffer create buffer. This will make a whole new one. And we're going to say rendering device free RID. This is flow input params buffer. So we're purging the buffer each time. If this works, we'll restructure it to have appropriate naming as well. Same issue. Compute list begin. Okay, that's not our problem then. Just a moment. Research time. Be sure we're not using that iteration of Godot. All of these are about 4.4 and 4.3. Okay. We must again look to our collision logic. Okay, we are doing all of the same stuff in our compute collisions as well. So we're going to go here and check on that. Because we should get a return marker in this call as well. Okay, this is fine. It doesn't mind this one. We know that collision is working. Well, we did until this particular iteration of the issue. So why is it failing here? As soon as one of those others comes into existence, we'll have that issue. And we need to make sure that we can invoke this at any time. So it's odd that it's saying it's happening on the render thread, because we're not doing anything on the render thread. Like, all the calculations that we're talking about are happening on the physics thread. So why is the buffer update causing it to have this problem? And if not the buffer update, since we skipped that, we've already initialized. The buffer has an RID. So we create that. Make a new buffer, which loads the variables in it. Cross over there. So we have a fail on this. I don't understand. How we could be reaching that point. Because we're not in the render thread during this. We're in physics process. But that same logic is true for collision, is that will happen, or is it? No, the collision gets started off. We will call compute collisions in world steps done. That is the end of the physics tick. So all of this is happening during the collision thread, and we will call buffer update during this, and it is fine with doing that. So why are we having this issue? Because you can force your way around it with like asynchronous calls by having it run on the render thread in theory, but I wasn't able to get that working. in a prior attempt, and ultimately I don't want it running on the render thread. I don't want to have to wait longer than I need to for it. Is it that we're dealing with textures? Let's do an experiment on that. I think I already did this this particular experiment, but we're gonna we gotta do it again. So that is the input texture uniform. We get rid of that. Now we should be getting a shader error in this because one of the bindings isn't going to be there. Okay, that doesn't count because... Oh, okay. We had the same problem. Oops, didn't need to close you. So why this time is it so picky? So it's not letting us call buffer update. It doesn't want us to call compute list begin. And we're doing all of this during the physics thread, which we are also doing in this. How about... we need a rendering device anytime we call create buffer. And when we set up the shader. So those are all relevant to the rendering device. So I don't want to keep messing with these, but for the purposes of this test, we are going to just call initialize at the start of this. Okay, so the data is wrong. So why, oh why, does this work? World steps done is going to be invoked in the game. Hey, Roman, we're having a time here. game steps done. Oof. Hello, Ember. Come on. Come on, decide how you want to sit. Yeah. Are you sitting across my chest so that Sammy wouldn't be able to take that spot too? Yeah. Yeah. So here's our game step end. Which should be our world step message. Or isn't doing that. Need to check for our messages, steps. Okay, world state is the one that emits that. Having to refresh my memory here. Base world state subscribes to... This should only pop into existence elsewhere. Game steps are the Godot level physics steps. So a game step happens constantly. Game step is meant to be if there's anything that happens outside of the simulation on the reg, it's going to look for game steps. If it's part of the world simulation, you know, physics and all of that, that happens on world steps. So for example, if you pause the game, world steps halt, game steps continue. Part of the reason for that is because the game runs, like the world runs at a fixed maximum and minimum frames per... Well, it runs at a fixed interval, and that interval is no faster than or no longer than. So, for example, I believe I've got it running at 30 ticks per second. If it could tick faster, it won't. If it would tick slower, as far as the simulation is concerned, it gives it a tick of the fixed length. Even if a whole minute passed between the two frames, it gives it a 30th of a second and says this is how much time actually passed. More kinds of steps? Not yet. There are other events that happen within them, but for the most part, those are the core, engine flow steps. So when we get game time passed, we're parsing it down. don't understand how this one runs into problems. I'm solving an issue, and the issue makes no sense. Because this is happening in the ready as well, and the ready is a render thread thing. Is that the problem, actually? Is it the other way around? I wonder if it's the other... No. Because core is invoking services in the ready. And that would be the same thing. It's doing that. Reset. In core is ready, we load the loading. But what if we also move all of this into the ready? So we're changing the order of operations slightly. We're changing it so that it's not when that particular scene is created that we invoke that. We're invoking it my favorite programming language currently, it's C#. My first formal education in coding happened in C++. This carries elements of it, but includes modern things that you see in languages like Java and whatnot. So I like C#, let's say. Still the same problem. Why? Call node, we get physics process. Physics process we get, and we're saying, we eventually say game time passed. World state gets game time passed. And is at this point invoking world time passed. Each of the things in the world are getting world time passed. And they are passing those along to their behaviors. Yeah. And those behaviors eventually pass along and hit move on grid. And move on grid asks the flow generator about the floor flow. And the floor flow gets created for the first time there. So in our collision manager, we're running through our collisions, processing stuff there. So on the start step of the game, at the top of the physics loop, we get our new information. So we're calling back into that. But it's at the end of the physics tick before it's actually formally over, where we'll call compute calculations. And that's where we're creating pipelines, we're creating the uniform set, we're calling compute list begin. All of this is happening in the same block that this logic happens. And it's in the ready of this node that rendering device and all of that is called. So this is pretty much identical to this one here. Because as soon as this happens, we are going to go into the services object and instantiate it as a static, which results in all of this happening. In particular, as soon as base catalog happens, we're going to instantiate the move on grid. And the move on grid currently I'm only using C-based languages. Would I be opposed to a Rust-based project? No, but the only way to hook it into Godot currently would be through either third-party APIs that other people have come up with, or trying to interact with the low-level API with my own translation layer. And I don't want to right now. If later I switch to something else, then yeah, I might try something else. But in general, I try to avoid any third-party dependency that isn't part of the engine. So like if I have to take somebody else's arbitrary package that isn't part of either the language platform or the game engine, I don't like the idea of depending on that. For an example of why that can be dangerous, JSON parsing. There was a very ubiquitous package that was being used for that, and it ceased to be an option. And a whole lot of folks had to scramble to fix all of their code as a result of that. Open source is neat and all, but there is a degree of yes. You're essentially sliding responsibility from your own team to an uncontrolled team for the purposes of expediency. And on some projects, that's fine. On some things, that's fine. That risk surface may be tolerable to you. But I'm paranoid. So why? Why does this break down? Okay, so what if we do this early? All right, we're going to short circuit this operation a little bit. We're going to get our move on grid. And again, I'm not averse to looking at options for it. If there are if there is baked in support for whatever game engine I'm working on to use a particular language, it's on the table. C# was chosen on this because I wanted to have the finite control, and C# is fully supported in Godot. Like, they make sure it's wired in properly. And unlike Unity, they're keeping up with the mono compilers. So bonus. So instead of calling the value here, we're going to do this it's going to be a bit of a hack at the moment, but we're going to go all the way down to here. And we're going to do that. New vector 2. No, wait. Vector 2 dot 0. Monocompiler is the compiler for C#, or at least a compiler for C#. It's the one that we're using here, and it's the one that Godot uses when it runs. So technically, Godot will build the .NET project itself. Okay, so we're going to do the same run here. We're going to see if we get the errors. The reason that it being up to date is relevant is because there will be APIs that are available, tools that are available in newer iterations of like C# and whatnot that you might want to use. I believe, and in an instance of a time that I was willing to try a third-party package, I was trying to do a YouTube stream integration. And that's a hassle, but there were particular things that you could do in a newer version of C# that was well ahead of what Unity supported at the time. And without that support, I couldn't really move forward with it. Now, ultimately, I juggled things around into different platforms and whatnot, so it became irrelevant. But, you know, there we were. Render thread again. Let me see where that was. Okay, this was all still on the time past. What's going on? It's still in physics process that all of this happens. Well, actually, it's a little bit different. It is a little bit different. So even with this being loaded in the ready here, this is being created as part of the tree structure. But we moved it into ready. I'm sorry, we moved it out of ready and into physics process, and it didn't care. We're not even running Godot physics anymore, though, but I expect they're probably running this on the same thread. I don't want to mess with that. Why? Why? End the scope only at the end of the game. That doesn't change the catalog. Lore Flow Manager doesn't need to be persistent either. Where do we have that living? Flow Generator is a singleton. It lives out here with catalog. World state and game are scoped. For science. So okay, but why? Okay, so we can see some of the error cases that are active in this, but the core of it is still functioning. When we create it the first time and it's sticking around, it's whenever it was created at that moment is where it matters. It's created as soon as that singleton is referenced. Well, this is as good as any this moment is as good as any for a quick break. I will be right back. And we're back. Okay, so talking through what we changed. So all of this scoped stuff here, what that means is, for the most part, all of it gets refreshed every time we start the game or not. Oh, yes. Let's check with the cats, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. We do have Sky in the tree, and Molly is across from the keyboard, all kind of conked out. Sammy, Mason, and Sherbet on the bed. And then Ember over on the shelf spot. Okay. These are scoped surfaces, so anytime the what now, Odo? Anytime we start the game, all of this stuff essentially gets remade. It doesn't ring a bell. As far as when the paranoia starts, that's like forever. I'm always concerned about worst case scenarios. So if it's that it's generated at that time, tangentially related at best, Odo, that's another reason that I don't trust anything to do with vibe coding, is that from from the first time people were trying to do it, including arbitrary libraries, unnecessary libraries, conflicting libraries, as well as now corrupt or poison libraries, is a problem with them. It is incredibly risky unless you know what it's doing, precisely what it's doing, for any of that code to reach production, let alone testing. Because there's nothing stopping one of those random libraries that it includes, because the shape says it should be there, for it to contain code that is just like, hey, phone home and install exploit, you know? But why does that being scoped help? I mean, having so ultimately we're going to have a flow manager. The generator, though, still needs the same handling. But the generator only runs once. And that is during the setup. Just... oh... vibe coding is going to do such lasting harm to the software development community. For one, it's what's happening right now, is the value of software development is, in the eyes of the public, is plummeting. You have advertisements that are like, oh, anybody can do this, super easy. You can just do it yourself. You can make an app all by yourself. And yes, you can, but the end result is not necessarily what they're presenting it as. Anybody can build a house. Like, you can just go out to a hardware store and buy some wood and nails and stuff, and you can make a house. Is it going to fall on your head, or is the city going to come and tell you, tear that down, you moron? Probably. I like the vibe coding workflows that are effectively ask it to do a thing and then repeatedly ask it to fix anything that was wrong with the thing. And I love how the prompts will, like, the if there is a reply prompt, that it will be, hey, I did the thing. And then it's told, is there anything wrong with it? And it's like, oh yeah, it's totally broken. And then they tell it fix it. And it's like, okay, everything is good now. And then fix anything wrong with it. Oh, I found three more critical errors. Does that actually match real development as far as the general idea of the workflow? Absolutely. You're seeing it happen right here. The difference is I know to do that. I know the consequences of not reacting to those failures. I know how to try to look for those failures. If you're not already if you don't already know how to program, those tools will cause problems because you can't check them. You can't verify that it's actually doing what you want it to do and not some random thing. If I could find a option for that that didn't require me to get grubby language model fingers all over my system, that might actually be kind of fun. Just having a session of, hey, do this precise thing, and see what results. So why does scoping this? When it's scoped, what that does is in here is when all that stuff gets reinstantiated again. So we end the scope, and all of the objects that have been stored here get released and can be remade. So the next time something asks for them, it makes a new one. Makes a new one. Some of these don't have their interfaces set up yet. There are still remnants that I have not shifted over to the do everything in code pattern. There are still some. There are still some that are using Godot scenes, and I'm stripping as much of that out as possible. I kind of feel like there are too many people that think that's how programming works, James, you know? Well, you just do a thing and it does what you need it to do. I've said it before, and kind of again, it's that learning software does exactly what you tell it to do. And I don't think there are too many people that hear that and say, well, that's not what I meant. It's not doing what I meant. That's not what that's not what I said. I said it does exactly what you tell it to do. When I said add scoped this, there is stuff that happens in the background as a result of that instruction. If I don't understand this instruction sufficiently, that doesn't matter. I actually don't want the code to try to suss out what I meant, because it might be wrong too. Noida is fun in that it is weirdly a description of programming. I think they did another one. It was like Baba is you or something like that. a little puzzle game that had the same vibe of whatever you have set up in the instructions, in the logic, is exactly what is true. You know, your thoughts and feelings on whether it should be true or whether that's what you wanted are irrelevant. The machine code is the rule. If you need to change it, you're going to have to find the right sacred unguents to rub on the gears. Is it unguents or is it unguents? Never checked that. Huh. Internet, tell me of pronunciations. I don't know how to pronounce the upside down E. From the look of at least Merriam-Webster, it seems to think you're correct, like unguents. Or unguents. I think it's unguents. But anyway, Cult Mechanicus reference. Let's go. Okay. The flow generation logic really shouldn't need to be part of the scope. And the catalog is ultimately invoking it based on this. It implies it's the J, so it's not a G. Like I said, I don't know how to pronounce the upside down E that is part of the pronunciation. But it seems to be the J and not the G. Curse you, English. So this is during process message that it will do it, but we will invoke the flow manager and get the flow to center at this time. The flow to center does not rely upon the rendering device, but the rendering device will be created as part of this process if it needs to. If it doesn't find the file, it would be created on this moment. So in theory, if we go into the data files and we go to our flows and we delete both of these and we run it again, it does not go wrong, and that is confounding. Actually, no, it's okay, because we don't run a shader for that. Flow to center does not run a shader, we just have it running in code. It is purely running on the CPU. So this call, by coincidence, is okay, because it doesn't invoke the shader. It could. There's just no real use to it. The reason there's that hitch is because this is gigantic. Say 6,000 by 3,000 texture. We're doing some iterating. But the flow generator could just as easily, like, this is a constant, effectively. We could create flow to center as part of... There are two pronunciations listed. There's that one, and then there's the one with the J, ungent. Isn't it neat? Or again, at least Merriam-Webster. At least by reading, I would assume unguent, but... Again, we're dealing with our alphabet. How it looks does not matter. Just the presence of a G in the spelling means it's up in the air. Seen a couple of videos that talk about things like EAR sounds and whatnot. As there's really no way to know how you're going to pronounce it. Is it like air or is it like ear? The exceptions prevent the rules. So again, with these services, it's when we go in through core, when we load the game, we begin scope. When we end the game, we end scope. Both of these brackets effectively say everything that is scoped goes away. We're creating a bubble that is in there. But this isn't called for the first time until this thing is invoked. We could put this elsewhere, but it would necessitate an initialize call that would need to happen everywhere anyhow. We could have the first time you try to resolve that it initializes. C++ is okay. Like any of the lower level languages, I'm not averse to them. Would I suggest that I've said before, would I suggest that it be part of a person's programming learning journey? Yes. Languages like that encourage you to learn what is actually going on. Like when I make an array, when I create a list, there's stuff happening in the background that you don't see, as easily in things like Java, C#, that kind of stuff. That's hidden from you. But in C++, it is not. This shader language is very C++ like, very, again, C++. It lives in that domain. And when you're dealing with them, you need to deal with them in the way that you would be dealing with C++. So, file, not that one, this one. When I'm creating buffers to send to that shader, I need to create them out of bytes. I'm making byte arrays that are the appropriate size for those values. And then when I send them to the shader, it has a shape that it expects. So I'm sending this structure. Well, on the shader, there's technically usually this space here. So there's 3 uints. The shader wants things that are the size of a vector 4, because a lot of shaders are like, their origin is with messing with colors. So it wants something the size of 4 consecutive floats. So when you're dealing with this, it's not uncommon that you have to think of it in blocks of 4 things the size of floats. If you're using smaller things, or if you're using fewer than 4 things, you need to account for that in memory. Read as you need to avoid it because it's a nightmare. I actually think I have that in my other shader. Here you go. See this little guy right here? The padding value. If that's not there, everything goes terribly wrong. Additionally, this right here, you'd think it would be 2 floats. It's actually 4. Not in that the values contain the other 2. It's that it's a vector, and so the shader wants it to be a vector 4. So it will have the space for a vector 4. So the order of this matters. The size of it matters. That's not something you're going to get out of C#. Like, this is the easy way to handle it too. You can actually go in and define in the structure, this is when this variable's memory starts and starts. Shenanigans and sorcery. But such as shaders, you need to be precise how you are dealing with them. So, learning experience. We get to do stuff. We get to learn things. And that's part of this whole project, is when I came into this, I had never done a major project in C#. I'd never done a major project in Godot. This is the first game I've programmed. So this is all learning. On the fly, in real time, broadcast to the world. Hey there, Jamel. Welcome. So, do I want to mess with this? This solves our problem. But I don't like it. We could try to move it around and solve some other issues with it. But I don't like it. For now, it'll have to do until I move other stuff around. We shouldn't be getting that delay there. Well, that's part of our problem. Tech debt is a real thing. Anybody that tells you otherwise is somebody that just wants to get the project done despite quality constraints. Oh, dear. I don't think I've ever been involved in a programming project at a professional scale that actually handles tech debt properly. And I don't mean cleaning up all of the issues. I mean acknowledging issues and saying, but we don't care. Explicitly saying that. You know, it's a feature, not a bug. Shut up. Is a way to handle stuff. Okay. Godot side, do we have a problem? Okay. Now, as far as refactoring, we have refactored so many times on this stream. You have no idea. Well, maybe you have. I don't know which ones you've seen. Okay, so let's go over some of the problems with that one. Let's get our move on grid and see. Okay, we do have pixels as far as our flow to center here. Okay, so we are getting that value. Let's open up our debugging ones. Here's our flow to center. Loading, loading. Loading, loading, loading. This is flow to center. This is an EXR file that shows the vectors that we're using. Black space is negative numbers. It doesn't show a color for it. But that is going to the central point. As best it can render. Now, this one corresponds to this guy. So this is the image we're showing. This is a floor image as far as the code is concerned, which means anything that is colored in, anything that is not transparent, is movable surface. So we want to have a flow diagram that allows you to, or wants you to move in this way. in general, you wouldn't have empty spaces like this. But we're going to try to make it so you can. The problem with this is these edges here. Because what the logic is doing currently is a combination of pushing you away from these dead spaces and pushing you towards open spaces. If you are in any of these open positions, it will try to push you to other ones. It's odd that these are all the same. I don't like that. So there's clearly a problem with the red spaces. I'll have to figure that out too. But the real problem are these borders. Because this space is not necessarily no-go space. And it's not necessarily allowed space. But because it is out of bounds of the texture, we're essentially ignoring that area. And that has ramifications. It does not change the vector that is put into this space here. It sees the open territory, or at least the code looks at the open territory and says, that's out of bounds, do nothing. But we don't want it to do nothing. Using the red as supposed to be happening, we would like the red to go right up to the edge there. Because it is okay that they enter it. As it stands, this marker right here says go straight down. And that's not right. I mean, at the very least, it shouldn't be straight down. It should be calculating into here as well. Like, we shouldn't have this hard line. So there's a breakdown in the shader logic that generates this. Now, there should be sharp lines like this, but it shouldn't be an absolute line from that particular red to almost straight down the way it is. Not quite because floating point precision, but, you know. In theory, all of these are down and slightly left. It's weird that that's the case. Because what should be happening is that it looks around it and finds the sum of all of them. Well, let's dig into that shader logic then. For reference, we have not actually solved the rendering device thing. We've kind of sidestepped it. We know that it's actually being created in the physics thread now, but, well, kind of. We don't really. Because it's getting UI interactions, which could be elsewhere. That needs more digging. That is not good. Okay, so we're iterating over everything in the area. Let's actually put it another way. We're going over the entire image, pixel by pixel. And we're looking within 16 pixels of each pixel. We want it to push away from walls. So we have... Let's go through it. We're sort of rubber ducking this, you know. Not that one. This one. So, it is broken up into segments. This is multi-threaded. So within your segment, within a square of the image, we're going to take each one of those pixels and we get the color from that pixel, from whatever one we're looking at. If that is a wall, this might be the issue. So we get the one that we're looking at. And now we're going to look out from it. Sorry, if this is meant to be floor space. So if it's meant to be floor space, we're now going to look within 16 pixels of it. So in each of these, it will be like where we are minus the search range and plus the search range. So let's say the search range was 1 and we're on 1, 1 as our position. We're going to be looking from 0, 0 through 2, 2, which means we'll be covering 3 different pixels. We'll be covering a 3 by 3. And right here, we're going until the edge of the image. And we will not go below, so we're going until the right and bottom edges of the image, and we will not process it if it is past the left or upper edge of the image. This already creates part of the problem in that we're not addressing the empty space. If it is open space, this is a wall when we're looking at it, and we're going to get the position from that wall to where we're looking. We're going to get the vector from that, and we're going to essentially add that one in. We're going to push it in. If the space that we're looking at is open, we're going to add that vector in as a from where we are to that space. So we will push out to that open space. So that's why we've got this, reversal here. The colors are just vector 4s. We're using the colors to visually represent what we're looking at. But from a functional perspective, we're not really looking at the image. Well, we shouldn't be really looking at the image. What we're looking at is a series of vectors. And these vectors are... We're creating a flow. We're creating a series of vectors that will push the enemies around. Or any object that can't collide with walls. When we're calculating its movement, we look at that and say, adjust it based on this. Exactly how we will incorporate that remains to be seen. It may need to be a special calculation outside. It will probably have to be a special calculation outside of the existing logic that adjusts the final direction. 2 things, Odo. We have the giant array that is moved towards the center, and those vectors are static. We offset them. We offset the position that we're looking at based on where the entity is versus where the target is. We adjust the positions. There's not a huge value in doing it that way, but we reduce the number of vectors that they move along. Similar for the floors is those vectors become static, and we combine those two. So we get a vector that is, this is how you get to your target. This is the straight line to your target. And we combine that with the vector that is, this is how you stay away from walls. So they will still try to move towards the target, but their vector will be shoved according to where the walls are. So if we get rid of the ones that say this is defined space, so we're looking for things that are walls only. We're going to run this again. So I think right now we're forcing creation of it. Want to verify. Duplicate. Data, flow data. Okay, we didn't. We need to delete it. It's still reloading it. We also need to make sure it compiles. So we've removed the logic that tries to push it towards open space here. That's kind of working, actually. Is not perfect. It's not perfect. So here, we're going to try to lead some of them in here. See, they jiggle at the opening because it's very narrow. So I try to have them pursue me through a wall. They can't. We still get catch points here, but you can see they're trying to move. And some of them can eventually get there. The push towards the center is part of what we want to accomplish, but here. If we push the range out further, that's kind of what we just did. Each pixel currently, for every pixel of the image, we're looking 32 pixels in every direction to determine how we want them to move. And that is incorporate, like the position of walls is incorporated. It creates, the further you search, the more likely you're going to get like oddities in that. But we can see that that the flow is accomplishing that part of it. Will I have narrow spaces like this? Probably not in the room design, but we're coding it so that it can try to handle it. I kind of like some of the erratic motion that they're going through. Okay, let's... So we're going to remove the logic for the flow to center. Entity movement, yeah, okay. We're setting up an entity movement here. So this is, we're adding in the floor flow. What we'll do is... So, entity and target position. This is from the target to us, so it should be target minus entity position. You see how it's saying entity movement dot velocity is equal to grid position? That one would be valid. That is a vector 2 to a vector 2. I've seen worse. It's not what we're going to do, but... All right, Oto. Have a good night. Cobalt Core style bounty hunter chase sequence yet? Not yet. Hey there, Lunar. Okay, we're removing the consultation of the flow to center. And we're just doing direct vector here. Whoa! Okay, wait. I forgot to incorporate delta. Okay. I mean, this is kind of working. Sharp corners are still a problem for it, but those will always be a problem. I don't want to have full node-based pathfinding. That's just more expensive than I want to deal with. I would like them to move smoother than they are. Let's look at the data here. Ooh. Well, this explains the erratic motion. That's wrong. It's wrong entirely. Oh. If I highlight this... have a show of how much I've selected. 32 by 32. Okay, this is a chunk. this is the whole segment, so this will be 32 by 32 as well. Yes. Okay, so there is a fundamental problem with the math as we have set it up here. Read as, I broke something. So if we get a wall, we want to push from the wall to where we are. And we're going to add that in each time. To current is being reset each time. The end of the KL loop, which is also at the after the KL loop, at the end of the IJ portion, the end of each J, we set that in there, and we put that in our collection. But why is the whole 32 block getting set to that? I mean, they're very likely to be similar. They're very likely to be similar. Where's directions set up? It's at the top of the J loop, that's right. So we're only changing the color if it is filled in the image. Then we're looping around based on the I limits. We get the color from the loaded texture. I don't think this is actually correct. It's not image width. No, that is correct. It is image width. Okay, this math is wrong. Or at least it feels like this math has to be wrong. think it's actually supposed to be height here. Okay, let's make sure it reloads. Still getting that erratic motion. Okay, so our shader algorithm is wrong. It's just wrong. But in... okay, I think we need to think further into this in order to get anywhere. I am going to call it there. Good a spot as any. So there's some fundamental flaw with the way that I am calculating this out, putting those pixels in there, that is resulting in this kind of erratic motion happening. Now, the saving logic is going to be a problem. Is also part of the problem. But I need to make sure that I'm getting this written correctly. The fact that the entire 32 by 32 chunk is coming out the way it is leads me to believe that there is some fundamental issue going on. So we'll have to consider that further, and that's going to take some thinking. So for the time being, folks, thank you for watching with us tonight. If you like what you saw and would like to see more, remember to like, follow, subscribe, comment. All of those buttons are generally good, so I'd appreciate it if you press them. If you'd like to consider financially supporting the channel, you can do so through platform-specific means as well as other options available through the LinkTree that can be found in my video descriptions and bio. But with that, I hope the rest of your day is good, and I will see you next time.